Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. My guest today is Harish Chandramowli, co-founder and CTO of Flair Software. In this conversation, Harish talks about his journey from his early university days in India at Amrita University to leading roles in major companies like Bloomberg and MongoDB. He articulates his shift to a niche field combining software engineering with security during his experience at Johns Hopkins University and his eventual move into cloud security engineering. He also shares insightful narratives about founding a small startup and the creation and development of Flair, which is a fashion tech platform, highlighting the challenges and triumphs he encountered. Topics that we cover include his approach to managing remote teams, dealing with the pressures of startup life, the challenges of prioritization, and maintaining a work-life balance. Harish also discusses the importance of understanding customer needs and integrating AI and security in product development. Listen on.
Hi, Harish. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, as always, we usually start with self-introduction from the guest, and then we will take it from there. You can talk about how you got into IT, what has been your career trajectory, and anything else that you may want to share.
Yeah. Since we are mostly covering the whole part, let me start with from early days. I took IT in Amrita University back in India. That's my undergrad degrees. And from there, I think that's when I realized there are so many things you can do after your graduation, like the type of jobs you get, the way you need to go, because the offers I had were around like Infosys, CTS, Accenture, which are more like consultancy driven.
Yeah.
And then there was this company called Cordis, which was started by this guy, Bon. He used to be one of the biggest ERP provider, and then he had a startup, a small company. So I had to pick. It's a well-known brand of bigger companies versus small. I ended up going for Cordis. And that was also a really nice experience over the next 2 years to work very technical things on like C++, memory level management and different stuff. Through the process, while I was going through it, I became a little more interested around security, and all these memory leakage and everything led to me going to Johns Hopkins for my master's in security.
Okay.
When I went to Johns Hopkins, I realized everyone around me were way smarter than me. But the other part I also realized at that time is that a lot of people don't think of, okay, I'm graduating, I need to go to a job. People wanted to do something on their own. Some people wanted to become a professor. I think there are two parts in Johns Hopkins that I felt interesting was one, some of the classes I took, professors won't take more than 6 students. There won't be exams. There won't be any projects. It's all based on the credible discussions you bring into your classes. So the education system felt a very bit different, but at the end of the day, I think the takeaway I had from those classes, reading more papers, having more discussions were tremendously more than what I have done in my undergrad of like typical exams, projects, sitting in a class. And Johns Hopkins led me to Bloomberg. I joined Bloomberg as cloud security software engineer in a cloud security team. That's also like when I was looking for a job, being in security, I realized consultancy did not entice me or make me excited. And when I interned at Bloomberg, it was not supposed to be a security team. I just joined as a software engineer.
Okay.
And then that's where I got introduced to that. Hey, if you have security background and if you are a software engineer, that is a niche field. like a security engineer building all the security products, because you need to understand encryptions to all the technical details while trying to build a product as well. I think for 4.5 years I was around in Bloomberg. It was again like a great time. I was able to learn a lot. People around me like are smart and they were helping me grow. From there, I joined MongoDB. Again, I was not actively interviewing. It was very opportunistic where like they called me and they just established cloud department. They don't have any security teams under cloud. So they were like, hey, do you want to join us? We don't have a security team. It's an opportunity that you can take and run with however you want. That sounded interesting. And even though I was not actively trying to move, the overall like meeting the team and like the way the team handled themselves was so impressive, and I joined them. And actually next 4 or 5 years, that one day how I thought people would be was the same. Everyone was smart but grounded, nice. They are some of the smartest people I have ever worked with, and I would say some of the smartest people in the industry. But when you speak with them, they help you, they teach you. Even sometimes I would be like, am I asking a dumb question to them? But 4 years I was at MongoDB, I built a bunch of things around security. If you ever connect to a free tier platform, the authentication system was built by me and my team, one of the main team that built the dedicated clusters and managed the clusters. I think around 4.5 years at MongoDB, the company also became big, and I wanted to again go back and do something small, and that's how Flair came along.
Okay.
I think the one part I missed is that like during graduation at Hopkins, when everyone was doing things, I had a small startup in India.
Yep.
I wouldn't say startup, it's three of my like Hopkins roommates. We all just started a website. It's called Right Engine, peer-to-peer sharing.
Okay.
The thing that happened at that time was that when we released like a peer-to-peer sharing website, one of the things in India was a challenge is that you don't have SSNs like how it is in US. Validating one's identity was a bigger issue. And I was just working on like some domain validations for as an intern at Bloomberg. So I'm like, why can't I do domain validation and say this person works at Google, this person works at Microsoft? That's actually like 100% true because you can't just fake it. You need to be in the company. So we did that small piece. And in India, you have all the 4 or 5 car rentals that don't have a website and also struggle to verify people, and they started using it. The internet purpose was peer-to-peer, but things went off in a different way. It was very interesting, but unfortunately at the time, like with education loan and stuff, none of us were in a privileged position to leave our job and pursue that.
Yeah.
Looking back, now I have more appreciation of where we were, having customers without marketing, having press without marketing
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, that's when like at MongoDB and everything, I think I was at a stage financially where I could take some risk. So bunch of things came along for Flair. The 2 years in Flair again was a very different journey and very different learning experience. While my career till Flair was mostly about learning about technical things, executing a lot of technical things. As a founder, I would say the learning was more on the personal growth side because you face so many non-technical challenges every day
Yeah.
and you need to navigate that. So 2 years, it has been an amazing journey here. And it's a crux of like my career and where I am and things I have learned on the way.
Yeah, good. I think there's a lot to unpack. So how is this transition? Because you said Cordis was more like a small startup company, not a consulting company. But then you're also in Bloomberg, MongoDB, which are large companies, and then back to Flair. So you did talk about a few things from a small company to these larger companies. But then how did you adjust to, let's say, the whole environment in a larger setup?
So I think Cordis was like 100 people. So it's not like too small. I don't know whether 100 is small or big, but like everyone knows everyone to a certain extent. People are very friendly. But when I went to Bloomberg, it was as an intern. So you feel welcomed. Everyone come and talk to you. And especially as a new grad, you go through team matching. So you get to speak with the breadth of company at the beginning stages and you be in contact. I would say in terms of the speed at which you execute things in terms of the risk you take against execution varies, and the risk tolerance the company has varies. So in the bigger companies, you learn that like you can't move fast because there is like 10 other team you need to work with. There needs to be 10 meetings to get consensus on this is how I need to build. And I think the pressure overall is relatively less than working for a smaller company. So it's like a nice work-life balance exists in bigger companies. MongoDB, when I joined, cloud was still like 60 engineers because it just started. So it was again going back to my days at Cordis, and every engineer knew each other. You are way more. I think another big thing is like you are more closer to customers the smaller the company. In Bloomberg, I never interacted with a single external user. That was also a different shift. In terms of how I adopted, I think people around me helped to adopt. Every place I went to, I had amazing team members and peers who helped me adopt to the situations. And even at Flair, right? When I started Flair, everything is totally different. Now you are running a business, and executives at MongoDB still took time. Even like now, every month or something, I meet up with some executives from my previous job. They mentor, they help. And that is also like we started through Venture Studio. So there is a lot of people that help you navigate different situations. I would say it's about finding the right people and leaning on them.
Yeah, it's very nice. Like you answered a question that I had about the connect to the customer, but the other is about the scale of the problem you're solving, or let's say the number of users or the diversity in the users. Whether it is in Right Engine, where you're saying you had focused it on a particular segment, but the adoption was from a different segment. Or when you talk about MongoDB, it's probably going to be huge number of people who are potentially users. When you bet that, you need to anticipate that. Or Bloomberg, again, already being a fairly large platform, transnational, all kinds of maybe local interfaces, variations, and that will be there. So how do you, as the security person, anticipate the kind of breaches that could be there, or how do you fortify the systems?
I would say, for example, at Bloomberg, it's a lot more easier because the real scale is that there is 100 teams handling security. Your scale on what you are doing is actually small compared to the MongoDB or like my other experiences, right? Because when the company is small, when you are doing things, the breadth is there. Whereas the bigger the company, it's more deep than the breadth. So the customers and the attack surfaces were relatively small.
Okay.
And it's also peer reviews, right? Smaller the company, it's more riskier purely because you don't have the same level of peers who scrutinizes your security architecture, scrutinizes. So that was also like a bigger shift. I would say the shift for me is more like right now I am actually doing a fashion tech platform. So my customers are not like very cyber security focused. What they pretty much do is give me access to all the platforms. Like I have admin access to all their platforms and be like, you go and do it. So you can think of as like a consultant to a certain extent in this role. This is at MongoDB. It was more like, okay, anyone can use it. Anyone can attack our surface. That's pretty much where I had to think a little broader. At some point, you just trust yourself and be like, okay, if someone attacks, let me see what I can do. No. Most good security people, even the best in the industry, would never come and say, I have built a most secure product. Because there is always going to be like some hole that you have missed or something that you didn't see. So you can just do your best so that you don't get hacked.
So are you still in touch with the security topics, or is it consuming all your time in running Flair?
I would say I have been running more of the company these like last year or so, but I obviously am touch it like everyone in my background. And if Flair doesn't work, I probably would go back to security. I would say even at MongoDB, I was moving between teams. So it's not just like security as in you work on just security. The smaller the companies, the expectation is that you will be jack of all trades. You pick up slack on whichever whichever place needs your help, whichever place where you can add value.
Yeah.
At Bloomberg, yes, it was 100% security focused. You never work on anything that's not security.
Okay. Of course, any conversation today, and particularly with things like security, is not complete without bringing in AI. And I also noticed that Flair also has an AI kind of embedded in the name. Okay. Now, how do you see AI both for the attackers as well as the defenders?
So, how AI is used and how I see AI being used in different places, right? For example, when I speak with my team at Mongo, when they use AI, they still need to make sure the code does not have any bugs, because AI, if we don't review it properly, the bugs makes it easier for attackers. And overall, the attack surface and AI related things, the way at least I have seen so far and I've heard from everyone in the industry, is more around like IP and what privacy means when you use AI. The final piece of things that people are still figuring out is you can use AI to do so many things, but you still need to manage credentials in real world applications. Whether it's Flair, for example, is like my customers connect to Asana's, Shopify, and different things. You still need to make sure you store these credentials at the right place, and AI don't get trained on these credentials or it doesn't get leaked the other way. So how do you do those bells and whistles around AI to make sure what is fed to AI is only like non-PII related things and it's not like a very critical security related things? I think it's evolving, the technology is evolving, the challenges are evolving, and everyone in security is facing the same questions. And to be honest, it's actually a nice time to do startup or anything around these because there is no solution exist. And we always think about AI as, oh, it needs to pass. Agent does everything. That alone need not be it. Agent needs authentication. Agent needs these bells and whistles around it. So how do you build infrastructure that secures these things when people run their agents?
Good. So, moving on to left. What was the bug? You said that now, after being in a slightly larger team, you wanted to do something with some financial security, all that was there. But then, what is the bug that bit you to start up?
So it's not like I started as like I wanted to do startup or I was not actively being like I need to start a company. So I was in this fashion store called ONS in New York, like Soho. I was observing how they were operating, looking at their meetings. So it was very clear that first, I'm not like fashion as like design person. I don't go and buy like a passionately like a very designer clothes or something. And it's never an industry I ever thought I would work on in the first place. But while I was sitting there, I was observing people, how they are operating. It felt very clear that fashion back office is a workflow and data problem because seasons changes, inventory management becomes harder. You need to understand where your inventory is when it is coming in so that you can book your models. And if you miss the delays, then you pay the models when you don't have an inventory and that becomes harder. So the thing that drew me to the fashion industry is basically it's one of the complex ecosystem where data and workflow are a challenging problem. And number two, coming from MongoDB background, one of the thing I noticed is, for example, people who sell t-shirts, look at your t-shirt as like color and size. That's it. And we have a female swimwear company and they have like cup size, torso length, and they have the regular sizes as well as color. So the data is very flexible for each one. And when the ERP systems they were using, when I observed it, were not flexible enough. So coming from MongoDB, it made me more, okay, I have seen how a lot of these schemaless things are getting built. How can I bring innovation and extend what I learned there to an ERP system? So we came up with something called schemaless ERP, which is more tied to you come in, you define what you want, and through the innovation, we can spin up end-to-end ERP.
Okay.
And that's how Flair came because it felt like a more challenging technical problem where you can bring in innovation.
Okay.
And yeah, and over it, again, same thing, right? 2 years as AI come in, even my thought process on how I am building this, everything is evolving, everything is like changing. But at the beginning, This was before the era of ChatGPT. This is the reason that I started in this industry.
Yeah, a curiosity question. Since you mentioned it's a schemaless ERP, then is there any limitation on the domain? Right now you're in fashion retail, all that, but then if you have to expand the domain.
No, we can expand to other domains. The reason I started with fashion is because the need for these toolings comes early in the cycle of fashion people compared to other industries. Because it's very seasonal, even if you are a $5-10 million revenue business, you need an ERP. Whereas for other businesses which is not seasonal, you can get away without an ERP, without a planning tool, without having to invest in big softwares later in the cycle. And that's the sales part, right? Yes, you can build the best technology in the world, but you need to understand how to reach your customers. What customers would be receptive to adopting the technology early on. So we have, $60-70 million worth of fashion business runs out of the platform. And don't think other industries would have adopted this early.
And you also mentioned it a while ago. When you talk about an ERP and in the enterprise, there'll be all these interfaces to other systems. And with they're changing probably at a different pace. How do you make sure that your platform, because it's probably the front end and some of the Flair is not working, whereas the problem might be actually with some other subsystem that you're connecting to.
This is where I mentioned AI has evolved and that's helped you a lot. Actually, one of the person who was like trying to use the platform asked us like, we have 2 engineers. How are you keeping up this platform with 2 engineers when a Shopify integration alone needs a fully dedicated engineer? And I think that mindset is something that is true a few years back. But these times things have changed. One, it's very easy to build custom integrations and upgrade your toolings because you just need an agent that does it regularly. Agent does a tremendous job of upgrading when there are changes that gets flagged. Two, when I talk about enterprise software, the other side is also enterprise software, which basically means like when Shopify changes an API, they have a good version control. When a warehouse management system changes anything, they have a good version control. And also picking and choosing your battles is very important when you build a product. So warehouse management system, for example, there are hundreds of warehouse management system and their APIs changes regularly. So we use something called Trackstar, who is a unified API for warehouse and they take care of it. Whereas when it comes to Shopify, I know it's stable and I don't need a unified API because I want to tightly couple our customers' workflow to Shopify. So we build the whole integrations at each and every place. So you pick and choose the enterprise battle, right? Like you need to know your customers. Once you know the customers, you need to understand the technology and how do you tie a customer's pain points who are not technical to the deeply technical knowledge you have and pick the right toolings, technologies to.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you work with remote teams.
Yes, my whole engineering team is in India right now. So we were mostly remote, and at Mongo, my team was a little bit spread across like New York and California. And obviously 2020, I was managing a team during COVID times.
Yeah.
So it's all pretty much remote teams.
So what are some of the benefits you've seen with remote teams?
I think the major benefits I see are, at least, especially in startup world, when I want to hire, the talent I have in India would cost me like so much more in US. That's a very first step. And the second step is it makes it so much easier to hire good people because now the talent pool available to you is very high. The other side of it is also true, right? That also means when you interview, you need to make sure those people are like, you don't need those are people who don't need managers, who are self-sufficient, who take responsibility and deliver on that responsibility without someone tapping your shoulder. So it goes both ways. But because I needed that kind of talent for remote teams, I realized I ended up hiring people who don't need managers. That means it's so much easy as a founder, as a CTO for me to manage where I don't have to think about stand-ups every day. I don't have to be like keeping track of my Jira ticket every day because these are people who do things and come to me. So that's how I see that as because the type of talent you look for in remote teams, that attitude you look for in remote people nicely lend itself where your own like work goes down.
You mentioned with well about the distance to customer, right? So I'm sure remote teams will also face that distance to customer, both physical distance as well as the logical distance. How do you understand the customer and the customer's constraints?
So there are two ways to do it. One, for companies like MongoDB or Bloomberg, it's obviously through analytics, right? You want to trace what user clicks because you don't just release a feature. You want to have the like numbers around it and how do people reach. So there are like a lot of easier technical ways to track the heat maps these days. So that's how you understand what my customer is doing, why they are doing it, and what's happening. And for a company like Flair, when you can be even closer to the customers, I don't want to invest in a heat map because I don't have time nor the money to do that. So in those cases, my engineers, I don't have customer reps. I really don't believe that you need to I really believe that engineers should be the customer success people dealing with customers, dealing with bugs, at least in the early stages. That's how they get to be closer to the customers. Again, some of the mistakes I did at the beginning of the Flair days is like I wanted to shield my team. That means I took all the customer tickets. I had the harder conversation with the customers. And when I had to do a lot more sales, when I'm really overwhelmed and I did not have a choice, I let my engineers do it. I just see tremendous growth in them and how they handle things. And part of that is more of me letting go and trying to just be like, I have to be protective, which is feels like a nice thing to do as a manager, but I can see how putting them in the front lines makes the whole experience on what we are building really nice. An example for me is very simple, right? We push to Shopify, we sync emails, and people, it's really hard to move between systems. And my engineers noticed it, and they came up with a chip where you click from Flair and it just puts you directly in the product in Shopify or directly in your email where we are talking about that product's conversation. It's such a small use case and very easy technical challenge. You wouldn't have thought made your customer experience delightful if they haven't seen how customers are clicking through the platform.
Yeah, interesting. Now, what are some challenges of working with remote teams that you have faced? And
Time is definitely a challenge, especially for me with people in India. Time zone differences has been a biggest challenge. The other challenges is like being very conscious on how do you keep the culture. The reason I chose India to have the remote team is because I know the culture. It's easy for me to build that rapport. Whereas if I had gone for another country where I don't know the culture, that becomes harder. Yes, it would be just like another corporate job, another corporate team. You don't have that closeness. A simple example for me would be like people don't care about Thanksgiving in India, but if you wish people happy Deepavali, give them gifts on Deepavali, they are more happy than a Christmas gift. It's such a small thing, but that makes a huge difference in the culture. So when you hire remote teams, it's very important to understand the culture, at least have someone who knows that, hey, they need to teach you the culture. And that's true for, it's not just remote. Actually, the reason I learned about it is because when I joined MongoDB, one of the first things they told me, like, hey, I haven't done an H1B before. I don't know how much to do, but you need to teach me. And when you hear that from like an executive, VPs, and like everyone, you pick that up, right? So in remote teams, it's really important that those kind of listening exercise as a manager and not just from the technical side becomes more important, but also challenging, right? When people say, if you can't relate, what do you do? How do you do your homework? So I think cultural is one. The second part is like my engineers used to work till 1 a.m. and I have to force them and be like, it's 11, wind down. You don't want people to burn out. You don't want people to spoil their health. And with remote teams, I see that especially when people are so passionate, they just work. The line between work-life balance blurs a lot. So I feel like I had to be very conscious pinging them like every other day and be like, just go to sleep. I know this task exists. I give them task in my morning time. So in their mind, they just got the task, they need to complete it. I give you the task in your night time so that you can do it the next day and not today.
Interesting. Yeah, what about retention? How do they identify with the organization, the culture, with you, your style, with other colleagues who are not there?
Touchwood, at least from the technical standpoint, when hiring engineers, retention has never been an issue because they follow good engineers. And whatever I do, like even the people I hired are people who followed me into this, and people I never had to like actively interview till now.
Okay.
And when I say follow, that means like as long as the engineering culture is good and you let people debate things, it goes. They just don't want it to be like you do it, I don't care how you do it, or they also don't want that to be like I know how to do it, you are just going to go and do the small part. At least that's what I noticed with my team is that the engaging part is like the more shared ownership you have about the product, customers, and have those discussions, people feel very like close.
Okay. How big is your team?
I have 2 engineers in India, one QA tester in India, and then one salesperson, one cold calling person in US. And in Philippines, we have an ADR who tries to bring up with a list of customers we can contact. Oh, we have a product person and a salesperson in LA. So everyone is remote.
Okay. Yeah, still a reasonably small team to be cohesive and to listen to each other. Yeah.
A very small things, right? Wishing happy birthday. So one of the things I learned from MongoDB when we were remote is like we have this launch like Slack channel where executives and leads post, I'm taking my dog for a walk. I am taking my child to this school. My child did this. So just that human aspect of things brings down the gaps. And I try to do that same in like Flair. So one of the very first Slack public channel I started is Flair launch, where I post about my life,
Okay.
things that happen so that people relate to you as a human and not as, oh, he's a boss or that way.
Yeah. So taking further on that, you said that running a startup is not like being an engineer. There are a lot more things that some things you may enjoy doing, some things that you may have to do. So the two challenges that I've seen the people share is one is, of course, prioritization and time management. The second is about even if it is something that you don't really enjoy doing, but you must do, making sure that your enthusiasm level doesn't fall and the team doesn't see that you are under stress. Have you faced the situations?
So the last question you asked about the team doesn't know I am under stress. Yes. Every day has so much challenges, so much stress that my company is going to shut down tomorrow. But then you put a brave face in terms of your customers, in terms like, hey, things are going great. As a startup, there are challenges, but it's not existential. But inside, you know that every single thing has been a challenge and you need to go back and think through other stuff. In terms of things you don't like to do, I don't know because it's more like there are things I'm afraid to do and I had to do and learn than things I don't like to do.
Okay.
It's like I was afraid to do sales. I was afraid to come on this kind of podcast, talk to people.
Yeah.
And these are very uncomfortable situations for me. And getting over those uncomfortable situations was a little hard. I think sometimes it's also just confidence, right? I think the confidence is where I struggled rather than I don't like it. It's more of I never had the confidence to do it. When I started this company, there was people who asked, hey, with your accent, can you be a founder? Can you communicate with your accent? It's such a small thing that used to bring you down and be like, I'm so happy when I am at the background, building the product, building the technical innovation, because it was not because I don't like doing sales or like doing things. I feel like those kind of like feedbacks come once initially make you less confident and more afraid to do these things. But the other part of it is true. When I actually spoke about the people around me as a part of incubator, as part of like my previous management, then people are like, they push back and support you in the sense like, no, that's not true. It's just that this person has never worked with immigrant. You should be able to do it. You should try to do it. Yeah, again, for all those stories, the truth is the last 2 years, I think when I said in the intros, it's like there are people around you who help you navigate these uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you don't like doing things because you're afraid or you're uncomfortable than being like, I don't like it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the third case is you don't like doing it because it's boring, but in
Mhm.
startup, nothing is boring. Everything is challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, but what about the prioritization and time management?
No magic tool exists. I am not good at it. I went for 2 years without taking a single day of vacation, working on Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh.
That was not healthy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend doing it. I also don't know how, as a founder, you can manage time, especially as first-time founder. Because second-time founder, you raise more capital, you have more resources. It's different. For Flair, we did raise over $1 million easily, but then that doesn't mean anything with this such a big team. So you do still have to do a lot.
Mm.
Second-time founders, if you can raise a bigger capital, it's a very different story, and hopefully that helps you. And the other part is delegation, right? I think initially I don't think I delegated enough. And like I said, the example was how I put my team in front and make them speak to customers and take all the responsibility. Delegation helps. And I did it when I was forced to do it when I physically don't have the time. I should have been more proactive about it.
So, while doing that, and you did talk about the fashion industry being very volatile, seasonal changes, and probably the old styles coming back, or suddenly there's a new thing that kind of disrupts everything. And recently, I was reading about Lulu and suing Costco. They say that Costco has stolen their designs on their, mainly their garments and all that. How does that affect a solution provider like you?
So that doesn't directly affect us typically because in fashion industry, people use 30 to 40 softwares and every software has a niche importance or things that they do. For example, as a part of PLM software, it's called product lifecycle management software, where you do designs, you want to protect designs, and ideally they help you get the IPs so that IPs becomes important. And we come more on the business side. At that point, you are over it, but you integrate with those people to understand what's happening, what else is going on. Because at the end of the day, if you sue someone, it's an expense in your ledger. And the only way you can make that expense work is by increasing your clothing cost so that you have balance sheet like money and everything. So we do like very closely work on what is happening with our customers, their IP issues and everything purely because it has monetary impact, real monetary impact. But in terms of filing IP itself and what is happening, I feel like I speak with customers, I speak with designers, but I don't think I'm directly involved that I worry about it every day.
Okay.
So we have this one bridal wear company, for example. They actually, you can pay 300,000 to patent the design so that they don't remake the design ever. And those are fascinating things for me to learn when I started this. I'm like, would I pay 300,000 to like just so that the designs are not made?
Yeah.
Yes, the IP and everything here in this industry is so like different. Again, all those were very big learning things for me. I'm not directly involved in it. It's just because I'm working with founders, I just hear their stories, their pains.
Yeah.
They like, I'm sorry, that's where my kind of job ends.
Again, we touched upon this a little bit earlier. The mix of technology and business savviness. Do you think that this blend has to be there in everyone in the company? Even though there may be developers, there may be sales, they may be doing some specific roles, or is it only with the founder?
You naturally see that a lot with the founder because every founder needs to know your customer, know the product. Because you set the vision. If you don't believe in the vision, people who follow you are not going to believe in it. Everyone needs to have it. I would say at the very least, the founding team needs to have it. Maybe when I cross 30, 40 employees, I will rethink. You will have a dedicated customer success person, a dedicated product person, because this cannot scale. You can't be 100, 200% company and say, everyone in my team has to speak with customers. One of the things at MongoDB they did really well that I liked is that everyone in management were the only people on call, because managers prioritize things, and it helps like to understand where you need to prioritize, how you need to prioritize just by looking at those tickets. As the company grows, probably I might want to do that like all the managers up to CTO goes on call for as long as possible. Otherwise, yeah, to your question, it's context, because I would say everyone should have it. That's the ideal case. I would like it. But the reality and practical difficulty in executing that kind of vision for the team, yeah, it's hard.
Because that leads to another question, since you've had experience in doing a startup with your ride sharing app, and now you have a team here and all that. There's always been this complaint or aspiration or expectation. Then why can't we build products for the global market from India or solutions? What do you think is holding back and the teams here from penetrating that?
So the things I noticed is that when I first started Engine, what, like 8 years back, when we were pitching to VCs, obviously we had VCs from India and VCs from US. And at that point, I feel like a lot of people I spoke with India, they saw that like a business than a startup. Because if you put $1 million, you are not going to get anything back at the end of 2 years. But things have changed a lot. Now, when I speak to VCs in India, it's a very same attitude and the vibe I get here. I'm like, we are investing for this company to 10x, and not like a business where we need you to be profitable tomorrow. So I feel like in India, first, the ecosystem definitely had a little bit of catch up to do when it came to investing and how you see investing and how you think a startup burns through their money. When I say that it's not 8 years back, there were not VCs doing that. It's just that a common man couldn't get access to those type of VCs, because the number of VCs who did that already were like very few, and they get access to allied proven talent. But the number of VCs in India has definitely expanded.
Yes.
The place about building global things, I don't think it's not happening in India. It's happening. And often the way it happens, even what I am building here in Flair, it's only for US market for my first 3 to 5 years. And once I prove here, once I see that it's working, I will expand to other markets. That's very important in understanding your targeted customers at the beginning stages. So startup, if you want to be global on day one, more often than not, you might fail, because you don't know your customers. It's really hard to have a targeted sales motions to get your initial customers, to prove your validity, to prove the product. So being global I don't think should be the first target for everyone who starts a company. Rather, it's actually good that people concentrate on the pain points around them, pain points around the people they speak with every day. And yes, as you expand, as you prove yourself, when you go to Series A, it's a good time to expand.
Okay. This is one, again, curiosity question, which I come across very often from people who are working in the service industry, more in the consulting space and all that. When they say that working for an Indian manager overseas is tougher than working for a manager from a different country. You have any?
I had an Indian manager back at Bloomberg, and when I joined Mongo, there was no management, like no Indians in management chain. I was like the first Indian in the management chain. I didn't see a big difference in terms of my relationship with everyone I have reported to, worked with. I would say some of them do come from company culture, because for a company like Bloomberg or Mongo, it doesn't matter. To be very honest, one of the reasons I took R&D is because R&D is one place where this doesn't matter.
Okay.
More often than not, it's a company that sets a culture. One. Two, hiring engineers is hard. Hiring good engineers is hard. So your manager wants to make sure they hold on to you.
Yeah.
So it's always been a nice relationship than anything else. Sorry, I feel like I don't have enough experience on these things to like really answer that other part.
So, okay, that's right. The last question I had is, with so much happening around you, and you talked about the dynamics of all these things, how do you stay grounded?
One, I don't think I've ever had confidence that I'm doing well. It's people around me who usually says to me that, hey, you're doing the best you can. This is the best way of seeing.
Uh-huh.
I think staying grounded is so easy when you feel like out of 10 things you do, 3 things are failing every day, 5 things are failing every day because your wins last for a minute or 2 minutes as a founder. In the third minute, you are in the next crisis. You are trying to figure out what to do with the next crisis. That's, I would say, in the last 2 years. And before that, again, people around me were way smarter than me. There is no way I can be cocky.
Mm.
It's like, I just want to live up to their expectation. I just want them to feel that I am as good as them, as a team member, as a colleague. So, anyway, yeah, it's just like working with smarter people makes it easy. And when you are a founder, you don't have time to think about your wins. It's always just time to think about crisis.
Does that add to your pressure?
Absolutely, yes. I don't think anyone who runs a company would ever come and say differently.
And how do you still project such a happy, smiling face and a calm face?
You enjoy these things. So when I started the company, you will be in a honeymoon phase. Like when a lot of people are in ideation before you really take like a VC money, before you have your first customer, people usually think that's the hardest phase of the company. Sometimes it's not. The moment you have customers, the moment you do more fundraise, the moment you have a board, the moment you have investor updates to send at monthly basis, the pressure adds on, right? But it's also, I'm learning every day. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to enjoy what I'm doing. Who knows how long this will last, right? Next month, I might come and say Flair is shutting down. It's like it's been like, I am telling my engineers for the last year and a half that, hey, in 2 months, we might shut down. And it's been a year and a half to an extent now they don't believe me.
That's good.
Yeah. You feel that, right? Like next month I might do it. I might have to pivot. I might have to do something else.
Yeah.
So there's no point in worrying about it right now. It's just enjoy how much ever longer it lasts and hope that you have done the right things for the company to succeed.
Good. Yeah. On that note, wishing you all the best with Flair and whatever else you'll try in the future. Thanks a lot, Harish, once again for coming on the show and then sharing your story, your experience, your perspectives.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I listened to, like I said, a lot of the previous episodes. I thoroughly enjoy listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.